Thank you for coming. It's 2 o'clock, no, 2 o'clock-ish, which is like the sleepy time of the day. So I'm going to try to keep you as awake as possible. No, it's fine, I'll let you. Thank you. So thank you for coming. I also want to thank Janine, Michelle, I don't know if Adlo's here, but it's really nice to be here. Who's coming? All right. It's super nice to be here. I want to start by saying, originally I had a very different idea of what I'd be presenting today. I was thinking about presenting on memory and time, and kind of playing with it through creativity, a little bit similar to Corinne's presentation yesterday, although not as beautiful. And I was struck with this realization. I'm from Canada. We have like no history. You know, we're a people without memory. We're a colonial group of people who claim space and refuse, in a sense, to remember the past. And I'm coming to Lebanon, a country with a complex, extremely long memory that means a lot to a lot of people. So it seemed a bit absurd. And so instead, I want to do something a little bit different today. Before I begin, I should probably... Oh.
Maybe you
I'll quickly say who I am. So, unlike most people here, I'm not a designer by origin. I kind of fell into design. Originally, my background is in social anthropology. Oh, yeah. So, my background is in social anthropology, and so I apologize for the aesthetics of this presentation. And my interest is largely how the material world influences the cultural worlds and vice versa. I have to, by policy, include a slide because I was supported by the European Institute of Design to be here, but mostly via ALBA, thank you, and I run the Masters in Social Ecological Design. So if anyone's interested, you're welcome to discuss it with me, although I think I would prefer if I were you to stay here at ALBA, as it's very nice and beautiful. However, it's not a bad project or program. All right. So tomorrow in the workshop, 40 of you will be coming to the workshop. We'll break down time and kind of frameworks and concepts and ways of interpreting time, and we'll be thinking about time in kind of different categories and pulling it apart and redesigning it. But I don't think we can do that right away. We can't just start with a framework. And I don't want to start with concepts. I want to start with a feeling. I want to start by immersing ourselves in different notions of time. The theoretical physicist Carlo Rovelli talks about time in this beautiful way. We inhabit time as fish live in water. It is all-encompassing. It is so natural to us, so fundamental to our existence that we often fail to see it. So this lecture is simply, I'm behind. It's simply to start bringing awareness of that very medium that we traverse and navigate, which shapes us and we shape it in this interesting designed dialectic. All right, close your eyes. This will only take about 1-2 minutes. But I want you to close your eyes. I want time to slow down. Relax. Feel the rhythm of your heartbeat. Is that your time? I want you to envision time in your mind. What does it look like? Does it have a color? if you were to touch it, is it hot or cold? Is there a texture to it? Or is it smooth? And does the texture, smell, temperature, or color change as it moves between past, present, and future? Is time moving, or is it just a steady flow, like a permanent line etched into the sky? If it moves, does it move gently, like a calm wave far out at sea, or erratically, like a heart monitor? Does it move in a kind of abstract space, a void? Or does it wind its way through city streets or across mountain ranges? Where, when, does it slow down or speed up? Is it rational, irrational, beyond comprehension? Which way does it move? Left to right? Right to left? Up to down? And try to look as far as you can at time. How far does it go? Does it go on forever? Or does it circle back at some point, meeting the past like a snake eating its tail? What's bigger, the past or the future? And how big is the present? Is the present flat, narrow, wide? Is it big enough to stand on comfortably? Is it leaning back towards the past or tilting towards the future? And as you're standing on this platform of the present, do events come out of the future at you, or do you move from the present into the future? You can open your eyes. Okay. So, did anyone have like a pretty clear understanding of time, a vision that's very clear? Can you envision what time looks like, feels like? I'm not going to ask for details, but just like, yeah, kind of. Or is it completely abstract? Abstract. What color did I'm just out of curiosity, I've been asking people for the last 3 weeks. Did anyone have a very clear color of time?
Yellow sunlight.
Say louder.
Yellow sunlight.
Yellow sunlight. Interesting. Time is yellow at the sun. Anyone else?
Silver. Silver. Silver.
Silver. Time as silver. Okay. Also interesting. Nice. Okay. Anyone have red? Okay, so in terms of temporal chromatics, very few tribes around the world actually associate with a clear colour to time, but for the very small Umayyad tribe in Papua New Guinea, Red represents the beginning or something fresh at the start of the day. Dark brown represents age, completion, or the end. It's assumed this logic comes from the human body. Babies were born quite red in skin color with coppery hair, and as they got older, the skin darkens and the hair blackens. And thus, time is experienced as a kind of shading process, a transformation of the world's hue. Elders are considered darkened and youth are considered bright. You don't say morning, you might describe it according to the shade of red. When the red fades is the afternoon, and when brown deepens, evening is at hand. So time is constructed based on the visual traumatic experience of everyday life. Time is transformation in matter, not simply a question of measurement or arithmetic, but rather what happens to us. So we're starting to see a vision of time that is not abstract, is built in the very being, how our skin reacts. They have a beautiful ceremony called the Ida ceremony, where they see time as being regenerated. What I find super interesting about this is that it's not simply, okay, we have youth who are younger and redder and the elders who are darker, but rather how we can use color to start playing with time. What does it mean to put red on your body as an older person? It's to start playing with these ideas or identities around time. So what they will do is they inverse age. The young wear dark colors, the elders wear light colors, light reds, trying to bring together new conceptions, new practices that kind of explicate or express the struggle between generations, the desire for autonomy. In this way, there's a type of resetting of time. It's a way that the elders, one more time, can be young and the young can be old. In terms of material culture, it's born into the fabrics. The mudding of a house is to add red clay to the dark clay, is to rebirth a house. The fabrics that they use, the textiles woven, are bringing light colors to patch a textile, to bring youth, to bring time into it. In Southeast Asia, color is very much part of the choices of what you wear. Ancient Hindu astrology informs a kind of colored notion of the week. Days of the week are very much associated with colors between parts of Indonesia, Thailand, parts of Myanmar. It's not just abstract time. You know, we're bringing color into time, or time is bringing color into our life, coordinating what we wear with time. Now, for most of you, when I asked about the direction of time, was there anyone, most of us, when we talk about time, the future, if I'm on the streets or having to talk to someone, I talk about, the past and the future. The Aymara Indians that you find in the Andes, I think it's so beautiful. They talk about the future behind them and the past in front of them. Why? Because they're oriented towards their ancestors. Life and time is a constant dialogue with your ancestors. So for them, design, like for us, design is about innovation often. It's about something new. And for them, innovation, for example, they have this term of innovation, but it's not about novelty. It's not about creating something new. It's really beautiful. It's finding different ways of remembering. That's what brings us into the future, is developing new ways of remembering the past. There's some really beautiful anthropology on the gestures of what it means. But yeah, how do we express our relationship versus the now to the past and future? That's how I would do it. I'm not sure about you. But you have these extremely different notions of time. In the Tongans and Samoans, they see themselves as the kind of protagonists in time, where the future follows us. What does that mean, to have a future follow you? Also, there's a lot of ambiguity in language where the words for yesterday and soon are the same. So time is deeply contextual. In the Maori culture, New Zealand's, the notion of whakapapa refers to a kind of ancestral tradition whereby ancestors are there to guide our decisions. So, you know, I walk backwards into the future with my eyes fixed on my past. And not only are you fixing your eyes, the tattooing on the face is part of this visual connection with our ancestors. We mirror their own designs. We embody a family genealogy and history. You know, in this way, they are wearing their own family's time, reflecting it back through the generations. I'm just including this tribe because I think I really like one element of their rituals, the Kadang tribe of Eastern Indonesia. They believe in such a tight cycle of life that they do not expect to ever encounter something radically new. Everything is just being cycled through. So I like it. If something happens that's like a big shock to them, they assume, well, last generation probably had something totally similar. And not only do they not expect to encounter anything new, but almost all of their rituals have one clear objective. It's to keep time flowing in the same direction. Why? Because if it switches direction, the dead become alive again. So they're afraid of some kind of zombie apocalypse. But it's really a beautiful emphasis on time. Their rituals are all about making sure time moves in the right direction. And in terms of architecture and maintenance and design, there's this kind of notion of like the first house, the original house, and you're always trying to cycle back to that first house. So for most of us, I don't know about Arabic, but most languages tend to have a clear metaphorical link between time and space. We struggle to make sense of time without space. However, there's a number of tribes that actually situate time within space. It becomes geographical. The Tzeltal from the Chiapas in Mexico, time is geographical. So the future, uphill. The past, downhill. But time is not flowing in a steady rhythm. It's moving across the terrain, down into the valleys, up, it climbs mountains, and as it moves through the topography, it speeds up, it slows down. In Alba, what are the the quick points of time? What are the slow points of time? Have you ever thought of that? What's that?
There is no time.
There is no time. We'll get to that. And they orient their villages according to a temporal logic. So the burial sites go down, places where older people are usually down, so the youth move up in time. The Yupno in Papua New Guinea, a really interesting tribe, which associate time very clearly with a single river. The mouth of the river, where water flows, is actually the future, which is kind of counterintuitive. And where it meets the sea is the past. And not only is it about kind of an elevation, but the actual shape of the river speaks to different temporal experiences, the eddies, the slow waters, the quick waters. And that time, because the village, some of the villages, most of them are along the river, time enters their village a certain way. So if you're designing a house, where do you put the door? You want time to enter your house. You don't want to be outside of time. To be outside of time is to be outside of community, to be outside of culture. The presence is simply where one speaks. I think that's very beautiful. You can see again, like the Amara Indians, their gestures indicate a very spatial notion of time. Now, these are a very famous tribe, the Kaethler in Pompura, Australia. Very famous because of their spatiality. Has anyone heard of them? It's kind of like I don't know, I imagine them becoming popular at some point on social media simply because they don't use concepts like right or left. So, did anyone here, can someone tell me where north is? Which way is north? Which direction? Is it? Really? I'm getting competing. This is north. Okay, so, okay. Okay, nobody here is very confident about which the directions are. Okay, you're saying this is north. All right, the Cook, they were people, they would not hesitate for a second, and one of the reasons is that they don't say, you know, this is my right leg, this is my west leg, now it's my east leg.
Huh?
So everything is oriented spatially. So imagine existing in a world where you're constantly orienting your body and everything according to directions. I think for me, you know, now working in the design sector, I think, wow, what does that mean if you see the world and, you know, according to this very clear set of bearings? Well, it changes this interesting element of time. So time for them always starts in the east and moves to the west. It's like the day. And then if you're going to be telling a story in a circle, the person talking will be positioned in the east, because that's where things begin. So a house, you enter a house in the east, where you enter is where things begin. Cities and towns are oriented on east-west axes. So time passes through buildings. We experience the passage of time as it kind of navigates on its way through our life. Up until 1904, there are examples of the Megalcon message bearers from Northern Australia, which allocated 28 parts of their body to represent the days in their month system. On these parts of the body, they would inscribe time, they would scar time, they would tattoo time, they would paint time. Time became part of their flesh. It was something they lived, they brought it with them. The anthropologist William Stanner coined the term every when. Every when. What a beautiful word. It is to encompass an Aboriginal concept called the dreaming, or dream time, which is a holistic way of seeing the present, the past, and the future folded up into one single kind of dreamy moment. It is primarily communicated only through the arts, through song, through dance, through painting. The Tongan and Samoan cultures in Polynesia, for them, you know, like actually many other languages, time came from the word, you know, tempo, rhythm, beat. And so for them, the idea of a beat or a rhythm, it was not about necessarily music, it was about making time. Tim Ingold, who many of you probably know as he's written on design anthropology, he describes time as something that is experienced not as a uniform linear arrow, but as rhythms, pulsations, interweaving cycles of activity, environment, and social movement. There isn't just one rhythm. There are many rhythms interweaving simultaneously. Human, environmental cycles, social timings. So temporality is plural, relational, embedded. Also, you can look at the work of Henri Lefebvre and his rhythm analysis. What does that look like for their cultural practices, the material culture? Their cloth production is deeply rhythmical. So the production, for example, of tapa or siapo is made from mulberry bark, which you guys also have mulberries, I believe still. It's very tied to when to harvest, when to soak, and then when to beat. But the beating is rhythmical, and it's ritual, not necessarily spiritual, but the rhythm that is beaten is the rhythm of that community. So they talk about setting the time for the community and creating the heartbeat for every generation, because you participate, you make time, you make rhythm, you hammer, you weave, Every element of this is temporal. The body becomes the clock, the metronome, and the archive. The newer people, for example, in southern Sudan, offer a completely, I like this kind of irreverent idea of time. They have words for the months, but they just don't care about giving days numbers. It seems really far too abstract. For them, time is about readiness, when things are ready. And seasons are cut into two. You have the season that you're in villages and the season where you're out in camps with your cattle. It's marked by the availability of foods. It's marked by climate. In Beirut, how many seasons do you have? Do you? You have winter? I'm from Vancouver. We don't have winter. We have rain, and we have like 2 months of like mild sunshine. In Italy, where I live, I have 3 seasons. You know, do you really have 4? Or are you just borrowing, the abstract notions of quarters because we love to divide things evenly into 4? Yeah? All right, great. Do you think, what would it mean to have 7 seasons? 8 seasons, 9? How would that change the way we experience? But it's a beautiful thing to start challenging. Why are we stuck in these rhythms? For them, seasons are always overlapping, producing new types of combinations of how we live, where we live, what our social relations are like. Tim Ingold, again, he talks not about landscape or timescape often. He talks about taskscape, where time and space are brought together through activities, the things we need to do. Milking, feeding, hunting. And of course, you have notions of abstract time, which is, simply that. You have tribes from the Sakhalin, which is kind of just north of Japan, and western Amazonia, who, they have all the language for time, but they almost never use it. What's the point? Why do they need time? They have some very rudimentary words they use regularly. They have complex notions of time, but they just almost never use it because it's not valuable. What is valuable about our time? What do we need to know about our time? Why do we measure everything? Does it give any meaning to our lives? For them, they would think we are absolutely absurd. The anthropology of pre-industrial workers is also very much an anthropology of time and bodies. So time was not measured, it was felt. The Scandinavian loggers in Norway, for example, they measured time by the fatigue of their body, the bodily strain, your breathing. A common saying was, when your back gets stiff, it's noon. So the day's rhythm was organized around cycles of exhaustion and rest. Moreover, there was sound that synchronized that work. So if everyone's chopping, they chop in a rhythm. And when they're sawing, they saw in a rhythm. But when they find themselves out of rhythm, it means they're out of time. They're out of synchronicity, it means they need a break. So, what do you have? What are your forms of fatigue that indicate? Here at the university, right now, it's after lunch, it's like the sleepy part of the day. But how does fatigue influence your understanding or experience of time? Do you have that? When your eyes are blurry, you just leave, after staring at a screen. But most of us don't. Why? Because we follow the abstract time of our clocks. For the Balinese rice farmers, time was felt as warmth on the skin. When the skin is too warm, it's time to rest. Time meant climate. It meant your body being exposed in the world. I've done quite a bit of work in Sierra Leone, inland, and they grow quite a lot of rice in these swamps. And so seasons are felt through muscle aches, through hunger, through humidity, through the soil, smell. Time is tactile. It's the callus on your hand. It's the fatigue in your bones. They talk about things like when you work until your shoulders begin to burn and your legs feel heavy. And evening only begins. Evening is not an experience of light or a number. Evening is when bodies slow. When they slow down, not at a specific hour. The Bedouins, they look at time through changing states in the body. When the first thirst begins, when shadows shorten their own body, when fatigue deepens. For us, fatigue is a weird relationship with time. It's how far we can go, within time. And if we get tired early, we see it as a weakness. No, for the Bedouins, I think it's very beautiful. Time is about a conversation between the body. Fatigue is a conversation between the body, landscape, and time. This is my own firewood. I live in the countryside and I only have wood to heat my house and to heat water. So every year I have to cut 6,500 kilos of wood. And every year I do that within about 3 weeks. And I can feel it, because this year I dislocated my shoulder beforehand, so I couldn't do it. And my body, even if it's only been 7 years, it lacks, it misses it. I feel different. I feel like winter is not ready to come upon us yet in Italy, because I have not chopped my firewood. My calluses on my hands are not there. Likewise, the Andean tribes talk about a soreness in their knees, the ache in their knees, not with the change necessarily of the climate, but in anticipation for work that they were going to do. Do we taste time? What does time taste like? Okay. For most of human history, scarcity was built into the calendar. When are we full? When are we hungry? And those were ritualized. A hungry Lent, a fast Easter, Ramadan. Ramadan, I imagine, changes very much how one experiences time. For both those who observe Ramadan and also for those who don't. All of a sudden, hunger or taste alters the perception and experience of time. In Italy, it was like a food for every 2 weeks, very specific. And sometimes they're not even good, but you eat them because it's recognized at that point. I won't offend the Italians by saying so, but it's really a rich culture where time and seasonality and taste are linked. In the Andes, I like this concept a lot. When the first potatoes are eaten, the mountains and the people taste each other again. But it's not in the same way that when we celebrate something like, a holy day, we have food that's associated. No, for them, the taste is what's bringing on the celebration. So when the potato tastes right, it's like, autumn isn't ready until the apple tastes, just right. At least where I live, I'm not sure what would be here. So the right taste signals that time has turned. And of course, for hunting or gathering cultures, again, months are just abstractions. The food is what drives human conceptions of time. All right, but now, I would be very curious to test this with you, which I won't right now. But still, in many parts of the world, we have these kind of situated units of time. So people would say, how much time? Well, as much time as it takes to drink tea, for example, in parts of South Asia, or the amount of time to prepare rice, or in the Andes, lower Andes, it's until the corn ripens. Or in Inner Mongolia, it was until a horse works up the sweat. What do we have today that can bring time back from abstraction into our everyday life? Does anyone have something they know fundamentally? Like I make pasta every day for lunch. It takes between 10 and 12 minutes to get a proper pasta. If it's overcooked, you know. But now, if you were to tell me, Michael, go sit on a table or a chair and tell me when 10 minutes is up, I would never be able to do it. But you tell me, Michael, I'm putting the pasta in the water, tell me when it's ready. I will never set my alarm, and I will tell you within about 30 seconds when it's ready. So we internalize time in these units that are less abstract, but we struggle to bring this out. And we all have that. Does anyone here have an example? How you know time? Yes?
No matter what time I sleep, I wake up at 6 a.m. My body memorizes that 6 hours have passed, and I wake up.
Okay, wow. So how can you utilize that to your advantage? I'm not sure, but it's beautiful. Yeah, there's a rhythm.
Yeah.
And when we try to challenge that rhythm, actually, it's been difficult. And there's a number of cases in history, and tomorrow in the workshop, I'm going to go through a little bit of times where we tried to actually redesign calendars or clocks. And fundamentally, it doesn't work because we have these rhythms that are kind of hardwired into us from hundreds or thousands of years. And so people rejected this. We have time as moral virtue. I love the fact that you guys are just so relaxed about time. I get nervous because I'm thinking I need to be punctual. I gave someone the example yesterday when I was up in Norway teaching, giving a lecture to a crowd like this, and they wanted me to start 5 minutes early. 5 minutes early, I mean, how does that work, you know? So time as a moral virtue, though, is really very much a rejection in Western Europe initially of Catholic rituals. And so all of a sudden, you know, if you Max Weber and the Protestant work ethic, you know, it describes the shift towards individual piety, so individual spiritualism from collective. And one way of showing that you're pious or that you're spiritual was through these outward acts. And a key one was punctuality, was being efficient with time, because God gave you the gift of time, so you don't dare squander or waste it. Are the Protestants much in Lebanon, and are they more efficient? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, part of that is for you, that extra time is that there's a space to do things in the right time. Maybe you're not hungry at 12. The Americans, even if they're not hungry, they're going to still probably eat at 12, you know. But, you know, and it materializes. I find this terribly funny that the German trains have really declined in recent years because it's seen as like a national embarrassment. You know, here for them, for Germany, you know, time is a cultural virtue. It is shameful for them that their trains are late. This year, Trenitalia, the Italian train company, actually came #1 in Europe for train services. And that was seen as like this great, you know, this pivotal moment for the Germans to reflect on their identity, because their identity is so consumed by elements such as, you know, functionality, efficiency, all linking back to this original notion of piety. But of course you also have things like time as luxury, ways of rejecting efficiency. In the 19th century, or early mid-19th century, in Paris, people were walking turtles. Are you guys familiar with this? They would walk around with a turtle that has jewels on it. This is Nerval, and he's walking a lobster with a blue silk leash. Walter Benjamin writes about this. It's beautiful. It's a rejection. Well, on one hand, it's very showy, but it's almost a rejection of time. It's showing how luxurious one is because time doesn't matter. So they just linger in the present. Has anyone here walked a lobster or a turtle? Japan, they have, kind of competing, I like this, not necessarily competing, but overlapping notions of time. On one hand, speed is precision, it signals precision, it's something that they're very proud of. While at the same time, slowness that you find in kind of Zen culture emphasizes refinement, sophistication, but they keep these kind of separate. So they're able to have them both. Going back to the Maoris, they have a notion of lingering. So this, maybe works also a little bit here. But to give time is to give respect. So you have these ceremonies, rites of passage, like the Pratama, the Pauriri, where to slow down is to show respect. You respect someone, you respect your elders, ancestors, and to do that, we slow down. Byung-Chul Han, the Korean philosopher who writes beautifully on time, he talks about this. We forgot how to linger. We've forgotten how to saturate ourselves in time. For most of the Bantu tribal areas of Africa, the idea of wasting time or lingering just was beyond their comprehension. Before colonialism arrived, it was argued that there is no notion of time without activity. So time begins at activity, and when there's no activity, you're in a state of readiness. It's almost like you're on standby. We have, of course, time as progress, a very Western notion. Here's St. Pancras Station, which was described as a temple of progress, of speed, efficiency, of moving forwards into the future. Now, this notion of time is interesting because it's so forward-looking that the past, if I can simplify, is basically dead and done. We are moving in a historical trajectory to ultimately towards a form of rationalism, of intelligence, away from ignorance. So the future is full of promise and expectation, and the present is almost a barrier that's holding us back from that future. So we're rushing headlong. It also means that people can be behind the time. What does it mean to be ahead of the time, behind the time? This was used by colonizers. We need to speed up time for this country. They're so far behind the time. It was a way of applying kind of a moral lens on peoples to justify forms of oppression. How can we bring someone up to time to speed them up? How can we slow down in the West? You see some of this logic in things like graveyards. How do we remember the past? And in our modern day, graveyards in the West are kind of these weird archival spaces. They're informational in character. It's grid-like and ordered as if you need to navigate it to find something. It's not to experience your ancestors. The materials we use tend to be stone, marble, something that resists change or decay. If you contrast that with indigenous, for example, graveyards, where you have a relationship to the past, it's about decomposition, so that ancestors are able to return to the land to be with us. It's about collective burials, so it's not about the individual, it's a collective memory, it's a collective return. And also the circularity, the spatiality, all kind of emblemates this constant dialogue we have. And of course, we have things like time as commodity. I think we all know this quite well. We lose time, save time, waste time, give time, spare time, make time, buy time. Now, time becomes something of a commodity, something we can trade, a form of currency almost. It also implies a bit of a dominance. We don't live necessarily within time. We have a way of manipulating it. We make people work, according to time. The clock not the task, becomes the measure of work in the industrial age. So it's not about what you produce, but rather how much time is spent, measured first by days, then hours, then minutes, and now seconds. We give our time today to social media. They monetize your time. It is a commodity. You know, most of our life is dedicated to work. Does anyone know what 996 is, the new culture of work? 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. This guy's nodding because, yeah, designers like to also exploit themselves. Yeah, so we give, if you look at it, our labor time, the time that we give to work, is so scheduled that even our holidays, we count the hours of our holidays. Everything is counted and measurable according to this logic. It's a kind of totalitarian capitalist timescape where we're afraid to take pee breaks. In the Amazon warehouse, we pee into a bottle. Every minute is controlled. But of course, time is never singular. There's competing logics, competing experiences. I think this is a great, great example in Mumbai. This is this big colonial tower in the university, the clock tower. In Mumbai, a kind of Gothic Phoenician building. And there's a big debate, you know, in the clock tower. Which time dominates this city? Because at that time, there were multiple times. And so there's this push from the British to synchronize Indian time according to the city of Madras in Tamil Nadu. And where Mumbai had its own time, and I like this. It wasn't like it was an hour different. It was 38 minutes and 40 seconds different from most of India. And they held on to that for 70 years. I love it. I mean, just resisting it. Why? Because this is our time. Our rituals work on this. Our rhythms, we work according to this. We feel it. For 70 years, they resisted it. So at one point, there were 3 times that were functioning in Mumbai, which is the local time, the Bombay time, the railway time, which is the kind of how it aligned with Madras time, and then you had the government time, which was more aligned with Greenwich time. And you see this contestation in places in Africa where it made no sense along, particularly along the equator, that our day starts in the middle of the night. Like, try explaining that to someone when their day starts when the sun rises. It's so logical. The sun rises, that's 1 o'clock. When the sun sets, it's 12 o'clock. You experience the 12 hours of the day through the sun. It makes perfect sense. So many in the zone in East Africa completely rejected the colonial clock. And similarly, the Egyptians, their day started at dawn. The Babylonians, interestingly, their day started at dusk. The Romans and Chinese at midnight, like us. So you had 2 systems, and still to this day you find that. When I was in Ethiopia, I found it really challenging to think of, 2 o'clock would be, what for them would be about 7 o'clock for me, my time. So completely different experience. And so there's this contestation, and I love this, such a weird piece of history. Is anyone here familiar with Fordlandia? When the Ford Motor Company couldn't source enough rubber in the United States, so they built a prefabricated town in the Amazon basin to house 10,000 workers. This was back in 1928. And they offered steady work, decent pay, clean facilities, everything. It lasted 6 years. Why? Because of the temporal rhythms of so many of those inhabitants were not aligned with this kind of 9 to 5, I think it was actually like 7:30 to 6 or something, time. Moreover, it was aligned to Detroit time. And the people who were living there were used to waking up to the sound of birds or crickets, or not crickets, but the insects of the jungle. They were used to a completely different temporal experience. And all of a sudden, you had this whistle. It was on the water tower, and that whistle supposedly, I find hard to believe, could be heard for up to 7 miles, 10 kilometers. I think that's probably an exaggeration. But interestingly, when there was riots, one of the first things they would always smash were clocks. So the protest was actually the destruction of timekeeping devices. Ironically, the whistle that was heard by tribes in the jungle ended up using that to kind of structure their day. Alright, so how many of you are guilty of looking at your phone in a lecture? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your honesty. For the one person, because the rest of you never do that. 2, thank you, Janine. So we have this notion today that we're thinning time. We're thinning time for multiple reasons, but one of them is simply that time is so pulled in every direction. There's no great narrative. Present exists on a knife edge, and we find ourselves even kind of busying ourselves out of it. We check our phones while watching Netflix. Netflix now designs shows to be watched while you're also scrolling Instagram. I mean, it's insane. So we're actually dumbing down cinema in order that we can entertain ourselves through 2 different media. Right on time. I owe you. But there's this notion that time is becoming completely abstract and atomized without direction. And it's in contrast to kind of thick, contingent, local time. And interesting, some of the examples that Byung-Chul Han uses, he says, we need to bring back storytelling, craft, materiality back into our lives. In this way, time thickens. Uniformity, mass production, disposability, that thins time. The infinite scroll. Think about it, you can scroll for infinity on so many websites. There's no end, there's no purpose, and there's no end. It's creating a completely different temporal logic. And we're going to explore that tomorrow, and what that means for how we create the world, basically. By designing time, we create completely different social relations, completely different experiences of our body, of those, of the material realm, of politics. Everything is connected with this temporal logic. Hartmut Rosa writes also that we flatten things to consume them. Samara talked about this, the flattening through technology of complexity because we can consume it. The more complex something is, we have to let it be. We can't just consume it easily. I just have to add this. We're ripping apart the fabric of society with short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops. Is critique that we are destroying time. But you also have a few examples, things like that are really beautiful that we can learn from. The Hopi Indians in what is now New Mexico, there was a huge discussion for quite some time of whether they actually had a word for time. But their notion of time is essentially thickening. It's about passing over every space over and over and over again, so that the point of time is not a teleos, it's not an objective far in the future, but rather a thickening of the present, making it increasingly meaningful. It's more dense through meaning, through ritual. Also, for them, the future is anything that is not yet manifested. A dream is the future. A plan is the future. Present and past are things that are manifested, which I think is so beautiful. The Hopi, if you look at anything with time, you'll come across the big debates of the 20th century. Because all these anthropologists were desperate to find one tribe, one people, one culture that had no concept of time. And for about 40 years, they were used as that example, but it's been proven by Eckhart Malaki that that's not the case. Thick time. I'm running, don't worry, I've got only about 10 more slides. But I will slow things down. Thick Time by Clifford Geertz. He did research in Bali, a beautiful text called Person, Time and Conduct in Bali. And he looks at how they created such complex calendars and systems of thinking and living in time that just thickened it. It's the first time, in fact, for those who do anthropology, we have thick description that's based off of his experience of thick time. So he talks about the dense temporal fabric where every single moment has multiple simultaneous temporal identities. So every moment belongs to several cycles, religious, spiritual, political, etc. You have, well, actually I'll give an example of the Japanese calendar next, but moments are lucky or unlucky, days, hours are lucky and unlucky. I like this. It's so complicated. So they took 1 month between the 17th of December and the 15th of January, and they found that there was not a single day on which it would have been wholly safe for a young, fit Thai man to leave home, because there's always a reason that that day might be bad luck. The Javanese calendar combines the Saka Hindu, the lunar Islamic, the Western Gregorian calendars, in addition to the regular 7-day calendar, the lunar month, the lunar year cycles. It also contains a 5-day Passerin calendar, the 35-day Wetinon calendar, the 210-day Pawukan calendar, the octo-year Windu, and 120-year Kurup cycles. It's like, I can't imagine having to navigate that. It's so beautiful, it's so complex. But what that also means is you need almost like a priestly class to help you interpret it. It brings back magic into time. We find thickness in language. Okay. I can't speak for Arabic. Who thinks English grammatically gives more space to the present? Anyone? Over French? I think all of you speak both. So you think, yes, English has a bigger presence, a more operationalized present. Okay, it's a simpler concept of both things. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, interesting. They argue actually that English has a very small now in terms of just linguistically, grammatically speaking. I'm not great when it comes to breaking down languages, but French or Italian is more open with what you can do in the present. And these kind of ethno-linguists, they discuss, like, how big can the now be? How big is the present? Can we elongate the present somehow? And what does that mean for Marie Everitz's work? She looks at how now can be moved in the past and the future. We can talk about the now using the present tense to communicate things that happened thousands of years ago. And you find that in a number of tribes. Moreover, languages like Hindi, Nepali, Bengali have words that mean both yesterday, the same word means yesterday and tomorrow, kind of binding the present in a sense in this weird kind of cyclical loop where you need context often to decipher what is being implied. And then you also have languages. I quite like this, where the future is the known future. They don't like to talk about what goes really beyond 10 or 20 days for the Yele people in Papua New Guinea. And what I find interesting is, so they have a specific word all the way up to 10 days in the future. Like in English, it's like tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, the day after the day after tomorrow. No. They have very specific words for each of these, binding that near future into the present. Why? Because again, time is not just some abstract thing, it is culture, it is geography, it is space, and the way that storms and weather patterns arrive in this area usually are about 10 to 20 days, so you only really can understand temporally what the next 10 to 20 days will be in terms of the climate, and then a big shift happens. This was out in, I think, the Roselle Islands in the east part of Indonesia. Sorry, east part of New Guinea. Ecofeminist, materialist thinkers are trying to thicken time today. You find this in the West, Why? It's about bringing our bodies back in time, bringing scale back in time, bringing ancestors back in time. We talk about entanglements, enfoldings, so all of a sudden time becomes thicker. It's an experience, and in this way we can begin to start engaging with more complex problems, especially ones that deal with values like, you know, how do we deal with climate change or forms of oppression, etc. We're looking at it through wider lenses, just we're thickening time. And lastly, my favorite philosopher is Michel Serres, French philosopher, and I just think this is really beautiful. His notion of time is this accumulation. It's thickening through assembly. So when asked, you know, when was the car invented? It's like, well, the wheel was invented in the Neolithic time. Thermodynamics was invented in the 18th century, the 19th century of the radio. You know, the 20th century, you have the digital automator. So for him, things don't exist as single entities in time, but are constantly snowballing into this one assemblage after the next, and we just kind of interact or participate in a series of assemblages. So, time is embodied, tasted, felt, seen, beaten. It's worn on our bodies. It enters our dreams. It's embedded in how we cultivate, work, renovate houses, organize bodies, spaces, dwellings, how we shape villages. It is fatigue and shadows, sunshine, mountains and rivers. It is calluses on our hands and sweat and sunburn and stiff muscles and domestic management. It is cyclical or linear, imbued with a morality of use and fear of its reversal, commodified and traded, imposed and contested. It thickens and thins. Time is culture. Time is pretty much how we are in the world. So I want to end with this question. So I started with a quote from Ravelli. You know, time is like, for us, is like water to fish. They don't see it. You know, how can we, as creative producers, engage with time? How can we work with it, design for it? How do we thicken time? When does time need to be thinned? How do we create new notions of time? How do we break hegemonies of time, the commodification of it? How do we bring back, I don't know, temporal chromatics, give it a color? How can we play with that? And ultimately, that question is dealing with what kind of world we want to live in. And I'm genuinely convinced, after working on this presentation, that we're moving in a direction, in a very unusual, very novel temporal direction, which runs against most humans' intrinsic values in terms of relationality, things like ritual and meaning making. And so tomorrow, for those in the workshop, that's how we're going to start. We're going to look at kairos, chronos, and atomized time. 3 typologies of time, and how we can actually design for them, or if we can at all. So, I'm going to, I should have put this up there. I'm going to put this out to you for any questions or discussions. I also have a few questions I would be interested in knowing. You know, I'd rather not speak about time. I've been speaking about time for around 40 minutes now, 45 minutes. So, what does time mean for you as a practice? How do you bring your experiences of time into your work? How does time influence, your sort of values, your design values, your norms, your aesthetics? And do you challenge these? Do you just embrace them? Do you reproduce them, these values? And which of these different examples that I've given you have spoken to you, if you found challenging or interesting? So those are my questions, if you would care to engage. Yeah, I'm pointing to the guy who's not looking at me. So I know you have something.
The first thing I thought about is how, in all of my work, I try to
Okay. So time is moving too quick to design in as history, well, which is narrative. Yeah. Do you feel as designers that you're participating within a narrative, a historical narrative, a cultural narrative, that you're part of a bigger story, or you're just kind of on your own making some random things, hoping one day that someone will use them or think about them? Big question. Yes, please. I forgot your name.
Yeah.
Gabby. Yeah.
I wonder why you didn't talk about when time was created, because time didn't come up with everything. It came at one point, and then it went on.
Yes. You mean the 7 days of creation, I imagine, Gabby?
No. Big time.
No, look, tomorrow, it's a very good question. So I struggle to know what I could put in 45 minutes. I have a parallel presentation I'll be giving tomorrow, which looks simply at when we started measuring time. So going back about 36,000 years. And so looking at how time was first conceived, primarily through the lunar cycles. And some interesting arguments from a feminist perspective is that consciousness is argued. Consciousness was first developed by women as they realized their menstrual cycles matched the lunar cycle. Because it's argued largely that going back about 3,000 years or before, menstrual cycles actually matched exactly the lunar cycle. So I think looking at a historical perspective, time is very interesting, but we don't have much data of how they experienced it. All we have is how they measured it. And that we will talk about tomorrow, which is also very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, I'm thinking about locally, I have a lot of conversations, a lot of decisions, and I think a lot of insurance in the past 5 years, because of what's happening here and what's happening in Australia, I feel like it was frozen in time, or the time was stopped. And I think that has impacted a lot of what the culture has been, or art has been, and how different.
Yeah, beautiful if you heard that. Time being frozen because of external events or stolen from a generation. COVID is the lost generation. Years were stolen from their lives. You know, it's interesting, from Byung-Chul Han would say that's only possible if time doesn't have meaning. So if we can make sense of something according to a narrative, we don't feel that. But I think what we struggle with today is the broader narratives, what happens and why. And so it atomizes meaning. We don't have the hooks to hang our experiences on. And he says, yeah, I mean, acceleration, yeah, we're not accelerating. We go fast. There's been periods of incredible change after the First World War, after the Second World War in Europe, like immense change, but there was an idea for periods of what that meant, ideas of progress or ideology. And today we don't have that. Time just kind of whizzes out in all kinds of dispersed directions, making it feel incredibly thin but fast. It's accelerating, but we don't know, we don't understand where AI is going. So it just feels like things are speeding up more and more and more, where he argues thickening time isn't necessarily slowing it down, it's just giving it meaning so we experience it in a more slow manner. And I'll write it, Byung-Chul Han, Korean. Yeah, which is, yeah, absolutely. Often we live multiple temporal realities, whether it's in a classroom or outside with family. We have a moment of ritual. I think one of the key terms of the Eucharist in Catholicism is they use the word kairos as God in time. No, I think it's in the Eucharist, the kairos is actually talking about God intervening in time. So you enter a different kind of temporal disposition, and I think that's what's interesting is that it's not steady thick. It's like the topography, of the mountains. We create different timescapes. And we can design these through things like ritual, space. You look at how Japanese gardens are designed. You walk and then you have to stop and watch where you're stepping. It slows your pace down. And then you look up again and then you see something new. It's constantly playing with this kind of pace. And I think we can design a lot of our time, both from a kind of ritualistic to a purely experiential and imaginaries. Yeah. And also how a city is designed. Can you read the urban morphology of a city? If so, then the city is layered, you feel that. But in many places, they just, you bulldoze it. In Paris, in the center of Paris, you just kind of experience, House later, and then you have to kind of find the medieval parts. Or, I think it's interesting being able to have the capacity to read time. Yes?
In design, we use a lot of the term timeless, whereas timeless design. So, do you really believe this term, based on what you just presented?
I think what's interesting is it's trying to say that something exists, it's so good it exists outside of time almost. We're going to appreciate it in 50 years or 100. It's not bound to a fashion, to a style. But what's interesting is often how those things wear and tear, and how we rebaptize them in new types of time. They're constantly being cycled back in a way into the present, and given new meaning. And so I think it's interesting, the timelessness, might be the appreciation. The timeliness is the meaning that's given to it as it's reinterpreted constantly. Yeah. Okay, so is time abstract? But as you said, there's also our experience of nature. Our bodies change every month with the moon. What if time was a virus? I don't know how to answer that question. But I think what's interesting, and we'll do this tomorrow, is what changes if we have a 7-day week, or a 3-day week, or a 10-day week. Why do we have them? Why do we have 60 minutes, not 100 minutes? What does that mean for our life? How do we design time, essentially? Whether it's like calendrical, like a calendar or a clock, or a conception or a ritual? A beat, a rhythm. So then you would say we can design to be in harmony with time. So, yeah. So interesting. So again, coming back to design, what does that look like? For the Yupno Indians, being in time. Yeah, maybe. Okay. Any final questions? It's super interesting discussion, but I'm not sure if we can go on for too long. Yeah, I'm a very impatient person in general. I struggle. This has been very convicting for me. So, yeah, again, we also, just to go back to time, it's not abstract. Our bodies have cycles, women experience time different than men. There's gender time. Look at critical time studies. It's a whole field that looks at things like, queer time, feminist time, critical time, You know, there are physiological elements. It's not pure abstraction, and yet we've abstracted time in such a way that we pay no attention to the body. We pay very little attention to seasons, to the moon, where for most of human history, the moon was the dominant marker and indicator for time. It's only really been 2,700 years of human history that we cared about the sun. And that was a political decision. So, all right. So I'm going to end it by saying I think it's very hopeful. I think if we can see time, we can design time. I think if we can understand time, we can see how other people, bring time to rhythm or experience time, or there's color. I mean, just simply that element of redoing your house with clay is this act of rebirthing your house, restarting a cycle. I mean, you take that and you apply it to design. It's fascinating. What about making sure time doesn't go back? Or maybe it's about finding ways to kind of play with how time moves, the speed and slowness, or our bodies. How can we bring out new watches that don't work on chronos, on just measuring, 24 hours, but it actually measures your fatigue. It tells you now is lunch. It tells you the right time to do something, not abstract time. I mean, I could think of so many ways that we could start engaging with creativity to actually shape time. So if anything, I want you to feel empowered from this lecture to see how time is not static. It's so many things. And, it's something that we've been grappling with for thousands of years, and we're still wrestling with it today. So let's not just accept it, let's push back. Let's find new ways to live in time. Thank you.